Barry Weiss's media company, the Free Press, has a new health column, Free Press Health. It's written by her wife, Nellie Bowles, who is a longtime tech reporter. What does a tech reporter know about health journalism? Well, after reading this first column, I can say with confidence, not much. This video isn't about Nellie's career in tech reporting or her personally or even about the Free Press, but this column has a lot of problems. Not that all of her reporting here is wrong, but where it is, it's really wrong. I'm not even sure she realizes the contradictions in her article given how much she tries to cover and ends up glossing over everything. Let's break down a few examples. First, the subhead exemplifies where this is going. A new series for people who don't want plastic in their water or bugs on their plate. Microplastics are a real issue. I've reported on them since 2018 repeatedly. But bugs? Seriously? 2 billion people on Earth eat bugs every day. In fact, 80% of the world's population consumes insects. Insect protein contains 9 essential amino acids comparable to red meat. And insect protein powders are way more economical and sustainable than animal-based options. So Bowles' scare headline is good old American xenophobia because there's no health argument against consuming insects in a health column. Early in the article, Bowles writes that politics shouldn't interfere with health reporting. Then she invokes this strange metaphor about a kombucha lady being either at the January 6th insurrection or burning cop cars in Seattle. So Seattle, that was one woman at the George Floyd protests who got 5 years of jail time for what she did. And I'm not condoning burning cop cars. I think it was good that she was arrested. But picking edge cases on the left and comparing them to people who partook in an insurrection is exactly what the SenseMaker set does to try to justify their beliefs. Bowles is saying, I don't care if someone is left or right, I'm just talking about health. But she's not. The rest of the column bears that out. Back to the subhead. So right off the top, she's playing off these racist tropes, which again is not a health argument. But she knows that because later on she writes about NPR making the same claims, and she guffaws at the fact that anybody could be racist for saying that eating insects is a bad thing. And yet, the topic is rooted in racism. So her column is political right off the bat. Moving on and then circling back to that. Bowles takes a dig at this Time magazine article about the white supremacist origins of physical fitness culture in America. And it's based on Dr. Natalia Petrozawa's excellent book on the history of fitness culture. And it's something that we at Conspirituality wrote about in our book as well. Just because something is rooted in eugenics and white supremacy does not mean going to the gym makes you endorse either of those things. Both Natalia and us state that clearly in our respective works. But Bowles isn't trying to understand a complex history or make a nuanced argument. Just like the insects thing, you can choose not to eat them, and that's fine. But knowing the history of where these tropes come from is really important for understanding the psychology of a culture and its reactions to topics like this. Instead, Bowles just seems to get mad at a headline without offering any counterpoints or doing any research to back up her claims. And that trend continues throughout her column. She then says that moving forward, she's going to be offering insights from doctors and experts, and that her go-to expert is Vinay Prasad, talking about myocarditis.
So when people like Dr. Vinay Prasad are writing on Substack that COVID vaccines are very dangerous for children, make sure that you actually check out the paper he's referencing and see the full figure, which shows that more serious cardiac adverse events are much, much more common when it comes to COVID infection versus COVID vaccination.
You can check out the works of Drs. Dan Wilson, who you just saw in that video, as well as David Gorski and Jonathan Howard to understand how poor Prasad's research is and how compromised that his incentives seem to be. So anyone writing a health column that's using Prasad as a go-to expert is a big red flag that's telling you this is not actually a column about health. And this is where the dissonance really kicks in. Bowles cites a Jill Escher article in the Free Press in which the author, as well as Barry Weiss, explicitly claim that vaccines do not cause autism. autism, which is correct. I'm not endorsing Escher's overall thesis with that article, but if you're going to feature someone who's explicitly saying that vaccines do not cause autism, and then you're also featuring one of the biggest anti-vaxxers in America, when the origins of that modern movement come from the Vaccines Move Autism movement, at least write separate articles? But Bowles just seems to ignore these paradoxes, or maybe doesn't even know she's making them, because nothing here is explored in depth, which is pretty pertinent to health reporting. Later on, she makes it seem like the New York Times is saying that exercise is a bad thing because it's too intense. But the article in question is about 75 hard, which is one of the dumbest protocols I've ever seen. I taught group fitness at Equinox for 16 years, and I saw many dumb ideas coming from the fitness industry. Bowles calls it a workout challenge, but it's so much more than that. 75 hard is rooted in a diet protocol that many experts have criticized for promoting eating disorders. For 75 consecutive days, you're not allowed one cheat meal or even a sip of alcohol. And if you don't drink, fine, but here's the thing. If you break any of the agreements of the protocol, you have to go back and start over at day 1. The protocol also demands that you drink a gallon of water every single day, and you have to partake in 2 45-minute exercise sessions every single day, or else you go back and start on day 1. In all of my years of teaching fitness, I saw firsthand the mental and emotional weight that people place on themselves about their bodies. And so something like 75 hard is so unhealthy in so many aspects. Does that mean some people can't learn from it? Of course not. Some people really thrive with such discipline. I don't mind any program that helps someone, provided it doesn't hurt someone else in the process. But does Bowles discuss any of those complexities of 75 hard? No, because it just seems like she's shitting on her former employer, the New York Times. The irony is that she's criticizing the Times for making these statements, but she's not even getting their statements correct. She says that it's about people just working out, but that's only 1/6 of the program, and the Times is discussing the totality of it. So if you're going to write a health column, at least understand what a health program entails. The very last thing Bowles does is recommend 2 books, the first by Weston Price. Holy shit. Not only did this guy spread a ton of dental misinformation in his life, his legacy, the Weston A. Price Foundation, is filled with anti-vax, pro-homeopathy, 5G is coming for you, drink raw milk but avoid microwaves, pseudoscience. Price is a clearinghouse for health misinformation being featured in a fucking health column. Then Bowles promotes a cookbook by Price president Sally Fallon, and I guess you can tell where this is going. Bowles writes that she particularly loves Sally's warm title and brutal subhead, which is the cookbook that challenges politically correct nutrition and the diet dictocrats, in a column that claims that health coverage shouldn't be political. Look, just be honest about what this column is. Because it's not about health. And if you don't know, then don't write about health, because there are people who actually know what they're talking about. Or at least hire an editor so that the contradictions and bad informations in your columns aren't so glaringly obvious to those of us who can read.